wheel weaves and a new episode comes to pass. Episode 6 of Amazon's Wheel of Time adaptation titled The Flame of Tar Valon is officially here. I enjoyed this episode for a variety of reasons. It was definitely a slower paced one, which I'm okay with. However, with back-to-back episodes of slower pacing, with only 2 more episodes left in the season, I understand people's concern. If there was 10 episodes, then it might be different, but there is a lot of ground to cover here. I'd rate it a solid 7 out of 10. I thought Suwan and Moraine's performances, writing, and acting were the backbone of this episode. My biggest faults would just be that there wasn't much character progression for other characters like there was last week. It was very centered on the central conflict. I know this is important for the future of the show, and it sets a lot of pieces in motion. But as far as the here and now for an individual episode kind of rating, I am comfortable with a 7, which is still an extremely solid score. I consider 5 to be a good episode, which if it was all just world building and kind of the progressions and stuff that we got, a 5 is what it would be. But the acting from our lead actresses and the emotion in each scene bumped it up to that 7 for me. That being said, I'm going to get into the highlights I pulled from the episode, which kind of jump all around. They're not necessarily in order. But regardless, let's get right into it. Yeah, so I was just watching that back. Little dull, but I just want you all to know I'm still very excited for this show. It's just early in the morning that I'm recording this. But regardless, let's get right into number 1, which is the Suwan backstory and world building that takes place in this episode. So the episode starts off with Suwan's backstory, which I thought was a good addition because it sets up the gritty and persevering attitude of Suwan, who essentially had this chip on her shoulder since she was a child. We get a little story on what it's like to be a poor child in the tower when Nynaeve talked about her old wisdom being turned away. So I can only imagine this poor girl from a fishing village faced the same challenges that she faced. And we also get an idea that she's got some latent ability of talent, as she's already channeling with some finesse with 0 proper training. I mean, she ties that fishing line, and we saw Egwene could barely kind of channel the fireball or whatever it was. I'm sure they're very different things, but as far as we know, she knows what she's doing almost already. Then there's also some important world building in this scene that may have been lost on new viewers, so I'm just going to review it right now. When they return from their fishing trip, their home is burned to the ground, and there's this half circle symbol on one of the charred walls. This is the dragon's fang, something we're introduced to in the books as a sign of evil and some type of curse that people like scrawl on people's doors. So putting 2 and 2 together, we can assume that their home was burned down because the locals know about her being able to channel. You might be asking, why would that be? I thought Aes Sedai were kind of respected and feared within the world. Not everywhere. Suwan and her father happen to live in Tyr, or Tyr. I say Tyr. A realm where channeling is outlawed. Even full sisters are forbidden to channel here. And young girls that are found to have the ability to channel are sent upriver to train at the White Tower. This was essentially kind of like a violent eviction notice for this young girl to leave. I really enjoyed this scene and thought the emotion was well handled. They had me on a high with like that wicked fishing scene, and the music came in. And then they just kind of rip your heart out with that emotional send-off. I think this is a great way to start an episode. And for those of you that are confused with some of the geography in this, Amazon's webpage has a cool little map that shows you everything. Tyr is kind of like a Gulf Coast state in the United States. And then the tower would be located in like where Michigan is if none of the Great Lakes were there and it was all just solid land. On top of this world building exercise, we get a glimpse of something that was hinted at before by Dana the Dark Friend, the Stone of Tyr. At least I think it was. Right in the final shots in the background behind a smaller mountain, there's a large one that looks like it has spires protruding from it, as well as like a large stone bridge leading up to it. That's gotta be the Stone of Tyr. Now the walls don't have smooth sides, and I would imagine, but having a more mountainous shape might make for some moments in the series to seem more believable. I can't really say what those moments are. Book readers, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the wall of the stone up tier. Um, but with this more mountainous feature, it might allow them to shoot in some more real looking locations instead of having to use like CGI or fake walls. I'll be interested to see how they handle that. There's also a line later in, as far as world building goes, there's a line later where Suwan says that ships have been seen disappearing off the west coast. Aiel have been spotted on this side of the spine. Remember those two. And then they also kind of question how the Trollocs got into the two rivers undetected by any of the Aes Sedai networks. That's a big deal as far as world building goes. So all in all, to wrap it up, a lot of good world building in this episode, which I think is very important for the future. So maybe not a lot happened in this episode, but a lot more was explained to new viewers that don't have this background information. Tower atmosphere and design, number 2. One of the top reoccurring environments in this series is the inner workings of the White Tower, so nailing the design and the environment was obviously something that was going to be crucial to the success of the series. From what I've seen so far, I only have praise. We start off in what I believe is kind of the sitting room for the Amerlin, in that really cool top-down shot, and the whole place is made of intricate stonework. There's even like a little flower petal shape on the floor with each Ajah's color as like a petal of the flower. It would have been cool if the sitters were like in sync with their flower petal, but that really doesn't matter. The stonework isn't bland either. They weave together like a cool pattern, then it changes to the outer rings. And then as the camera pans up, you see floor after floor of this intricate stonework. And then if you look at those floor stones on those upper floors, they're all different Ajah colors. So incredible attention to detail on the design for these floors. I thought it was awesome. And then there's the atmosphere in each scene that's also commendable. The tower feels very alive. When Moraine is in that cafe, we can see Loyal and Nynaeve on the balcony behind them moving around. There's people doing stuff everywhere. These fictional places feel like real places. They feel like it feels like they're in the middle of New York City shooting a scene with like real people in the background or something like that. Also, like all the extras and stuff, you can tell that they have the different cultural and cultural backgrounds when they're walking around. People with different earrings, people with different clothing styles. They're continuing to make the world feel very much alive, and I hope they keep this through later episodes. I know COVID restrictions might have hit them kind of hard towards the latter end of the season, so hopefully where they're at in the story, you can't really tell that that's something that maybe affects the extras they're able to do in the costume design. But all in all, just the way they've brought this fictional place to absolute life is stunning. Number 3, the Amerlin seat. Transitioning back to Suwan, who's going to get quite a bit of time in this review, if you couldn't tell already, I was blown away by her performance. It's almost like playing two totally different characters, so I'm going to talk about the more formal role first. From the jump, we get this kind of swagged out walk as she's coming up to the seat, and it just reeks of regalness. I don't know. I'm not good with words. And probably one of the best costume designs we've seen so far, maybe the best, which would be fitting for the Amerlin seat. She's not a queen, but she's essentially queen of the world. We get this awesome line from Leanne. She comes, the keeper of the seals, the flame of Tar Valon, the Amerlin seat. And I don't know why, when I read the books, I never read it that cool. It was always more of like she comes, the keeper of the seals, the flame of Tar Valon, the Amerlin seat. So hearing it now, this is much better than what I did in my head. I kind of feel stupid. But each of those words punched like a train. Her voice is amazing for her role. I'm really happy with that casting so far, just from her look and her voice, and I guess the mannerism which she carried out what was pretty much a minor role in this episode, but still a great job. We also get a lot of discussion about the stole in the books. I always thought of it as more of a sash, but the way they have it in this looks way more badass. I guess I'm just not very cultured, so that's what I thought of. Um, but like I said, the way she conducts herself through the first trial with Logain, you would think she is some type of queen. She's got these awesome visual and audio effects to her entrance, and then from the jump, there's this commanded respect to both the character on screen and the viewer. It's just very well done. The way she talks is just insane. The way they wrote her dialogue, the way she doesn't respond to Logain's taunting her, like she knows right away what he's trying to do, doesn't fall for it. It was very, very fun to watch. It was impressive. Number 4, the Logain trial. Continuing the praise of SIUAN, the trial scenes in this episode were also very well done, which thank God, because they got a lot of screen time. I'm going to compliment the writing on this one, since these were pretty much all improvised lines and scenes, and boy, were they good ones. One of my favorite lines was, "Our laws don't exist to protect our lives, our comforts. They exist to protect our people from us." I mean, come on. If that doesn't have real life parallels, I don't know what does. Applied to the Wheel of Time, though, it is really impactful. Aes Sedai are supposed to be this well-respected organization, and if they garnish this reputation for passing judgment on people as individual sisters see fit, I think maybe some of my American viewers know what kind of attitude this might garnish. Skipping ahead, after Leandren throws Moraine under the bus, SIUAN is forced to ask Moraine why she's been traveling, and since she asks for the purpose of her travels directly, Moraine cannot tell her. She can't lie due to the 3 oaths, and telling the truth would likely lead to her being stilled, so she says nothing. I will say, after reading the books, and we get all these scenes where Aes Sedai squirrel out of answers left and right, the look on Moraine's face when she was kind of backed up against that wall and had to tell the truth or say nothing was a little satisfying. As a reader, we are hit with these scenes over and over again where our main characters are talking to Aes Sedai, and the Aes Sedai won't give them a straight answer. So this, I don't have anything against Moraine like that, but there's some other people that just lead into my sentiment here. But all in all, A+ acting and writing in this whole sequence. SIUAN's speech was amazing. It gave us a little Moraine background too with her noble blood and things like that. But overall, it just gave us a real sense of the massive power that Siuan Sanche carries. Number 5, and what I'm calling Mat's exorcism. It finally happens, and there was a lot to take out of what was kind of a shorter scene. First and foremost, Basil Gill confirmed. If you watch with subtitles on, when she tells that innkeeper to kick rocks, it is him. I don't know why that made me so excited. I guess I was just happy to see another book character that was still there. But that excitement quickly transitioned into drama as Lan and Moraine enter the room, and Rand's kind of caught off guard, and he goes right to the defensive. For all he knows, they're there to take Mat away and gentle him. So Rand, being the loving friend he is, tries to take on an Aes Sedai and her warder. Bless your kind heart, buddy. Lan steps in between them, and like in an instant, and just the look on Lan's face and the fact that he doesn't even draw his sword, it was a great character moment for both of them. And then kind of Mat does something that distracts Rand, and Lan disarms him in like a half second. Typical Lan. But from the jump, I think Moraine knows that something else is up. She could probably feel what was going on before she even entered the room, which I think is from the books. The whole sequence with the dagger, though, how Mat kind of springs forward and she freezes him, isolates the dagger without touching it, and then she just kind of does this exorcism while she's holding the dagger out. Mat's eyeballs are rolling back, and the black ooze starts to come out. It tries to get onto Moraine. Then it goes back into the ruby of the dagger. I really like this scene. I thought it was a solid representation of kind of what happens in the book with their own little thing. We also get a little tidbit where she says Mat should have been killed, but for some reason he's still living. And she says there's some type of darkness inside him as well. So I'm not quite sure what's up with that. that kind of is interesting. Then to cap this sequence off, Moraine absolutely slams Nynaeve with the if a wisdom is the title you claim, I suggest you start using some. Fucking destroyed. Moraine has zero chill, and it might have been a little deserved, because if Nynaeve continued to be stubborn in her own ways, she probably would have gotten Matt killed. Number 6, Leandren. Time out to apologize. I'm kind of starting to lose my voice from reading this. I don't know why, but my sentences might get a little funky because I'm giving myself a chance to rest, for God's sakes. But anyways, Leandren. Kate Fleetwood and the writers remain undefeated with Leandren's role in the show so far. From her attitude during the trial, with her kind of nervous body language mixed with anger, her facial expressions, her movements, to her eventually conceding to her superior person that is the Amerlin seat. You can really see the inner struggle going on there without having to hear some type of inner monologue like you would in a book. I think that's just great acting. And then she kind of has this catty Cathy thing where she throws Moraine right under the fucking bus in true Red fashion. And then in the same paragraph challenges the Amerlin seat by accusing her of being favorable to her old Ajah, the blue Ajah. This is a huge no-no in the Wheel of Time. The Amerlin seat is supposed to be impartial. Without looking it up and going to the books, I think it's kind of something like the Amerlin seat is supposed to be of all Ajahs, but no Ajahs, or something like that. And then the deadpan glare she gives the Amerlin seat after that accusation. What a dick. Then they have this scene outside the room where her character gives us a little to question Moraine on, saying that, like everything else you do, is for your own benefit, followed by more hints that these two likely used to be a thing. However, I'm kind of wondering at this point if it's that they used to be together, or if Leandren was just kind of always a jealous lover of maybe her and SIUAN in the past. But I'm not quite sure on that one. But it is interesting that we do kind of get a seed of doubt against Moraine, which is then picked up later in the episode as well. So they sprinkle a little bit of that in from this scene too. Number 7, the Blue Ajah. This is a pretty quick one. I do like that the writers threw in a very clear explanation of what the Blue Ajah does. I can't remember if they explained it clearly yet, but this was definitely kind of a Blue Ajah information episode. There's a very clear explanation of what the Blue Ajah does. The Blues gather secrets and discover danger before it strikes at the heart of us. We kind of get that in past episodes, but I think this was the most clear, slow-paced, in-your-face definition that non-book readers are gonna get. Then we're kind of introduced to the idea of information networks that exist in the Wheel of Time, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's a web of people who spy for the Aes Sedai within specific Ajahs. The fact that they know everything that's been happening on Moraine's journey just kind of shows how much information these networks are able to gather. So that's going to be something that sticks around for the duration of the series. Number 8, Moraine. This was a very Moraine-heavy episode as well. We get a lot of information on her backstory. She has this royal lineage. We have her past relationship with Leandren, her spy network, her current relationship with SIUAN. Each of these scenes, I really enjoyed Rosamund Pike's performance. I remember how people were complaining about her casting. I'm kind of curious what those people think now, because I think she's doing a very good job. Also, people keep saying that she lied in this episode. Please pay more attention to the exact wording she uses. One of the examples I've heard is Moraine says she has people watching for Rand and Matt, which is true. She then says that she has it on good authority that they're alive. She is the authority. This is also a truth. It's not a lie. Come on, people. Do you think the writers are going to fuck that up this early on? They have a lot of people looking after stuff like that. You really got to pay attention to what they are saying specifically. Number 9, Perrin. Perrin is alive. They made it to the tower, and he's been healed by the Yellow Sisters. as Egwene says, he may be healed on the outside, but something on the inside of him won't be the same, which is kind of leads us perfectly into the Perrin that we know from the books. He struggles with his emotions frequently. He struggles with violence. I think this kind of all leads into why they made the decisions they did with Perrin's character. So we can get that mopey inner monologue Perrin, and we don't have to have inner monologue to explain why he might be feeling a certain way or why he might have certain actions. We also get a little more information on what's going on with the wolf stuff. Well, it's not clear information. It's more speculation. When Egwene tells Moraine about it, she's clearly shaken. Through the episode, she's been calm and collective through quite a bit. This information made her lose her cool a little bit. So that's definitely something that is a huge deal. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Number 10, Knockin' Boots, a.k.a. the love relationship between Moraine and Suwan. There is a lot to unpack from this sequence. First off, Moraine hides her bond from Lan. It's a known fact that in the books, if someone that's bonded has sex, the other character can feel the emotions from it. Obviously, not having the bond makes Lan hesitant. It is his job to protect her. But Moraine basically tells him to kick rocks because today's power trip got her feeling some type of way, and she's got to go get back at Suwan for being a big meanie head. And then I'm guessing this picture frame is some type of Terra Angreal, for maybe entering some like a dream shard or some type of pocket dimension thing. I don't think it was for traveling. This would definitely throw some kinks in the story. I'd be willing to bet that the place they meet is not an actual location in like the waking normal world. But yeah, surprise to you show-only watchers, they are in cahoots with each other, and they're also getting it on. What I really enjoyed from this scene was kind of the power swap between the two characters. Seeing Suwan, who had been this regal leader, speak freely felt good to me to watch. We get a little bit more information on these two through this relationship. So much information about what's going on in the story as well. And then the show kind of reached its peak horny when Moraine looks her in the eyes and commands, "On your knees," as like a callback to earlier in the episode. That was interesting. But then the post-coitus wheel starts turning, and in a change from the books, Moraine has doubts about their journey and the prophecies. Now, I know this is being done to prolong the suspense of who the dragon is, so I'm not going to get too worked up about it. But Gitara didn't die and have that foresight for her thoughts to be questioned, Moraine, so why don't you just stick to the frickin' plan, okay? Anyways, one thing that I'm not sure has been explained well enough is the concept of stilling, which is when Aes Sedai have their ability to channel taken away from them permanently. It's kind of the female version of gentling, which is what happened to Logain. So it messes with their heads just as bad as it does to the men. So when Suwan says they'll be stilled if they bring more people in on their secret, that's why it's a big deal. I feel like they kind of don't explain why stilling is a big deal in this episode, at least from some of the people that I talked to that did not read the books. Another crucial detail we get is that the dragon could also join the Dark One, and that Moraine would kill them before she let the shadow get them. This is canon to the books and very much a big deal in the series. Through the scene, we get a sense of the sheer commitment they have to this mission. I mean, it's 20 years of lies, secrets, having to meet in silence, with the fear of something worse than death always looming over their heads. So just having all this information given to us through this one scene gives us a ton of information on these two characters. I really loved this scene. I'm continually impressed by the writing of these improvised moments that aren't in the books. Yes, it takes up time that other moments that are in the books could be using. However, the amount of world information we get, the amount of character information and emotion that lays the foundation for huge moments in the future, I think these are great ways to do it in such a little amount of time. Number 11, The Man in North Harbor. This scene was short and wild. Leandren comes in trying to pry into Moraine, and she just hits her right in the face with the, I know about the man you meet in North Harbor. Fuck off or I'll tell all the other Reds. Leandren's lip starts quivering. Drastic change in attitude. I really enjoyed both actresses in this. Now for the speculation. Is this just a man she meets to love, which is not something Reds typically do? Is it a man she loves, but maybe he can channel, which leads to questions in the future about Leandren possibly being combined with another Red sister we meet later on. Could this man be Andral? Who knows? I don't. Or is Moraine implying something else that we can't get into because of spoilers? I'm very interested to see what the answer is. Number 12, Nynaeve and Egwene. I'm just going to discuss these two together. The clear difference between the two's reactions to everything that happens to them in this episode is kind of neat to watch. Nynaeve is standoffish to everyone she talks to, everything that goes on in the tower. Meanwhile, Egwene is kind of looking around with like these puppy dog eyes at everything she sees. She's enjoying her conversations with Moraine. She shows the Amerlin the proper respect. So it's just kind of interesting to watch. And then that little scene where she says, "You're the most powerful channeler we've seen in 1,000 years, Nynaeve Almera." And then Egwene's like, "Wait, you can channel? What?" Yeah, that was just nice to watch. It was just Egwene gave the serpent rings back to Moraine, which was also a big deal, and then she gives those back to Suwan, I imagine. So that it's kind of nice they get that little closure early on. Other than that, not a crazy amount from those two, and that's kind of one of the reasons why this episode wasn't as high as the last one, just because there was not as much kind of character progression for each character in this episode. Moraine's sentencing, number 13. Moraine's little trial scene set up a lot of questions for book readers and show watchers alike. Mixed in with the incredible emotion we have from one of these lovers banishing the other, we have it done under the oath rod, which looks pretty cool. I'm glad it's textured so it doesn't look too much like a dildo. You can kind of see the power traveling through it in the weaves on like the grip. That was pretty cool. One thing that did throw me off was the words she says when she takes the oath. Like there's no sound in that hall. No one is talking and it's all stone, so sound probably travels pretty well. So unless she's somehow masking her voice without anyone noticing, people should be able to hear everything she said. Regardless, the emotion in the scene that is conveyed, and then there's this cool part where all the sisters turn around and face away from her and she has to walk past all of them. I really liked that. The kind of isolation it must portray. And she must be feeling at that point. Like I can see that as a viewer, as if like in a visual medium, so I kind of know what's going through her head, and it just kind of, it must have felt like a knife in the stomach. And then you have the look on Alana's face when she turns around, and then they kind of have this musical number kick in if she leaves the tower. Not gonna lie, it made me a little emotional. I wasn't crying or anything, but like I felt really shitty when that was happening, because that is not something I saw coming. And that's kind of another one of these changes that they've made that, it doesn't impact the story like a crazy amount, but it still is something new that I'm getting to experience. So I like it. Number 14, the Waygate, or the Waygate scene in general. I think we've all known for a little while that the Waygates were going to look quite different than they are supposed to in the books, and we finally get to see it in the show. First off, it's outside of the city. It's in this barren patch of land, which is kind of weird that there's nothing around it. Maybe that'll be explained later. And then it's opened by Moraine channeling, and not the kind of leaf key thing that we see in the books. I want to say that this change doesn't mean anything, but there are times in the story when people who can't channel use the ways. So I'll be interested to see how those events pan out. Another difference is kind of the interior of the ways. It looks a lot more rocky and spooky than I thought it was going to be. And then there's kind of this weird lightning storm going on. Also, the whole no horses scene, or the no horses thing, is something that I'm kind of curious about. I am wondering if maybe the terrain is too rough that the horses will like break their legs or something if they have to run. That's something that Jordan says to us a million times. It's like, oh, don't make your horse run on this rough terrain. He'll break his leg and he won't be any good then. And as we know, there's stuff in the ways that will make you run. So maybe that's why she says that they won't survive in there. And then we get this heartfelt reunion between everyone because they haven't all seen each other yet. So they finally all meet. They get to all see each other. You get Rand and Egwene seeing each other again for the first time since they all departed, and that was really sweet. And then we get this scene where they're all basically like, so what the hell is going to happen to us? And Moraine's like, the dragon needs to be there. And they're all like, okay, but what about the person that isn't the dragon? And basically they're just kind of left with this big nothing burger of doubt. And I think they all kind of get the idea that like they're going to save the world and there's a good chance they're not coming home. And then the scene where Matt stays behind, from what I understand, from what I've read on the internet, this is due to Barney departing the show. I don't remember if it has to do with COVID. They got to episode 6 filmed, and then 7 and 8 were filmed post-COVID maybe. And he didn't come back after that. I don't know. But either way, I'm more than interested to see how the hell they handle this, because there's some integral parts to the story that are gonna change, and I think they can figure out how to get him back. There's other characters that might still be around that Matt could run into on the road where they convince him that he needs to go meet back up with his friends. The power of friendship, and they'll have a little journey up to Faldara. So it's still possible that Matt will be there. It's just going to take some creative writing, but based on what I've seen this team do so far, I'm sure they can figure it out. They're very talented. All in all, I thought this was a solid episode. Where the standouts weren't necessarily the events that happened, but how they were delivered. The raw emotion we get through Rosamund Pike and Sophie, I can't pronounce her last name. I just don't want to pronounce it wrong, to be honest. The way their portrayals reach out off of the screen and just kind of slap you in the face with some emotion was extremely well done. The way Suwan is written, both the sitting room scenes and then that kind of bedroom scenes, they're incredibly powerful. There's tons of world building in this episode that people might not realize yet, because the consequences of the episode might not even be seen for another season or two. Unfortunately, I can't shake the lingering reminder that there's only 2 hours of screen time left for them to cover a lot of ground. So I'm kind of interested to see what they're going to do in these next 2 episodes and how they're going to leave us between seasons 1 and season 2. If it's a cliffhanger, I'm going to riot. But anyways, that's all I have to say. And when I say all, I guess I don't mean like it's... I said a lot. There was a lot in this episode. It was an hour long. Holy crap, my voice hurts. So I'm just going to end it. I can't wait to see what they have in store for us next week. But until then, I bid you adieu. See you all next week. Peace.